Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a supernatural horror film, Antlers. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. Frank, together with his accomplice, is in an abandoned mine in Oregon, a small secluded town where they run a meth lab. He goes out of the mine to check on his son, Aiden, who is outside wandering around the area. He tells his son to stay in the truck and wait for them. Aiden tells his father he heard something strange, but his father responds that it is just them working. He wants to go inside, but he is not permitted by his father. Frank enters the abandoned mine when he hears a low growl, but he ignores it. Inside is his accomplice, who is busy in the lab. While working, they suddenly hear a low growl and screech in the distance. Frank assumes that it comes from an animal, so his accomplice prepares his gun, while they check where the sound comes from. The noise grows louder as they enter the inner mine. His accomplice tells Frank that they should go, but he doesn't listen. All of a sudden, an unseen creature attacks them out of thin air. His accomplice shoots it with a gun, and tells Frank to run for his life. Aiden feels that there is something wrong, so he follows his father inside. 3 weeks later, Lucas, Frank's other son, attends his class. His teacher, Julia, asks him about myths and fables, but he refuses to answer. He feels uncomfortable because his classmates are bullying him. The lesson is interrupted when the bell rings. Lucas checks his bag and finds a weird stuffed toy that was put there by the bullies. After class, Lucas roams around the town. On his way home, he gets a stone and kills a small animal. Later, he approaches and opens a door, which is secured with a lot of locks. Julia opens an old piano and remembers her odd past where she is hiding under the stairs. Her imagination is interrupted when his sheriff brother, Paul, arrives. He sees Julia staring at the piano, so he asks if she would like to move it out of the house, but Julia refuses. After that, she removes some of her family pictures on the wall. That same night, Lucas is alone in his room, staring at his family's picture. He gets the weird stuffed toy that his bully classmates put inside his bag and then angrily cuts its head. Suddenly, he hears a noise coming from the locked door. A man calls and the banging continues. Behind the door are his father Frank and brother Aiden. The next morning, Julia goes to school and continues her interrupted lesson about myths. She requests Lucas to share his story, but the bully teases him. Julia still persuades Lucas, so he stands up and reads it. The story is about the 3 bears that live in a dark and wet cave. The big bear used to take care of the little bears, but it got sick and its insides turned black. Then one day, the little bear comes home and sees that the big bear and baby bear look different. Their situation gets worse, and they become angrier when they don't have meat to eat. In the last part of his story, he says that they still have each other despite everything. Julia praises Lucas' work, but she looks so worried because of the disturbing pictures that he draws. After school, the bully leader gets really angry after seeing the head of the weird stuffed toy that stinks inside his bag, so he hits Lucas in front of their schoolmates. Lucas screams, but no one bothers to help him. Luckily, Julia arrives and stops the commotion. She brings Lucas to the clinic, where they see scratches on his back. She gets Lucas' address and phone number on the file, and tries to call, but no one answers. In Lucas's house, the camera focuses on the small hole in the door that shows Frank's angry eyes, as he keeps on banging the door while the phone rings. Julia is really alarmed by Lucas' behavior, so she follows him after school. She sees him staring at an ice cream shop, so she asks him to go inside to eat. She gets the boy's trust, after sharing that both of them lost their mothers when they were 12. Unfortunately, his mood suddenly changes when she asks about his brother and father. He bids goodbye and asks her not to follow him anymore. It seems like Lucas is hiding something that he doesn't want Julia to discover. Lucas leaves the restaurant and picks up dead animals again, while Julia follows him to his home unannounced. Arriving, Julia hears a growl as she enters the door. It is Frank, who continues to bang the door upon seeing Julia. She is frightened, so she hurriedly runs to the car and leaves. In her house, while she connects Lucas' torn scary drawing, her brother Paul interrupts her, which makes her surprised. Julia tells him that he has every right to resent her for leaving him when they were young. They had an abusive, mentally ill alcoholic father, that's why Julia escapes and leaves. She just returns home after their father died of suicide. Lucas chops the dead animal and puts it on the food tray, then goes upstairs with a flashlight on his forehead. It leaves the food tray on the floor when his father Frank grabs it and tells him to leave. Afterward, his younger brother Aiden goes near him and eats. When Frank starts growling, Lucas hurriedly runs downstairs and locks the door. Then he hangs a small bag on the doorknob. Apparently, Frank and Aiden are possessed with bad spirits. They now feed on blooded meat and hide in the dark. While Julia is playing the piano, she remembers how her father abused her when she was young. She gets into her senses when Paul arrives. She asks him if he knows Frank because she thinks that he abuses his son. Paul knows Frank very well because he always rescues him whenever he overdoses himself. Julia thinks that Frank should go to jail, but the social workers are against it because no one will take care of his kids because their mother already passed away. At home, while Lucas draws disturbing images, Aiden calls and complains that he is hungry, but Lucas just puts on headphones and hugs a baby doll. In the morning, when he goes to the forest to make a trap, he suddenly sees an old man with a gun who is staring at a decomposed corpse. He gets scared, so he hurriedly leaves the place. In school, Julia reads a book about dangerous spirits, then checks Lucas' disturbing drawings. She shows the drawings to the principal and urges her to pay a visit to Lucas's house because she thinks that the boy is being abused by his father. The principal tells her that they cannot do anything now because of lack of evidence. Julia goes to a store and sees Paul. He tells her that a man's dead body is found in the woods and some of his body parts are found in the meth lab. They think that a bear or cougar killed him. In fact, the dead body belongs to Frank's accomplice. They cannot determine the cause of death due to the body's condition. However, they are alarmed after seeing teeth marks on the radial bones, which they think was done by a human. Meanwhile, Lucas goes upstairs to check on his brother and gives him snacks. Suddenly, Aiden spits black liquid, while their father continues growling. In fear, Lucas hurriedly leaves. The principal later goes to Lucas' house because she is troubled after what Julia reports to her. She wanders around the house. She enters the back door and looks for Frank. She opens the locked door and goes upstairs upon hearing Aiden's cry. She is so surprised to see Aiden sitting on the floor. All of a sudden, Frank comes out from behind and devours her alive. After that, Antlers burst out of his deformed body. On the other side, Paul and his team inspect the mine, where they find the other body parts of Frank's accomplice. Upon entering the mine, they see small bags hanging on the ceiling and antlers on the ground which they have never seen before. Weirdly enough, it is the same small bag which is hanging on Lucas' doorknob. Paul and his team hurriedly leave the place when they receive a report of a missing person on the radio. Later that day, Lucas is walking alone in the forest when he hears animals shriek in the distance. He follows the noise and is very surprised to see the bully leader. He is saying bad words against Lucas when they suddenly hear a growl. They look at the tree and see a horned creature that jumps and kills the bully leader in an instant. Lucas runs for his life. He arrives home panting and sees a visiting car. He goes upstairs and finds blood on the floor, leading to the broken window. He knows something's off because his father and brother are both missing, so he covers the car and wipes the blood to hide the truth. Later, Paul and his acquaintance go to Lucas' house for check. They knock on the door, but no response. They leave the place, thinking that nobody is there. It's revealed that Frank attacked the bully leader earlier and is now transformed into an evil horned creature. Paul goes to the school to inspect the disappearance of the bully leaders. All of them are clueless, but for Julia, it is not just a coincidence, and Frank has something to do with it. Therefore, she goes to Lucas's house and finds the principal's car. Soon after, the police inspect the area and find the dead body of the principal. They also see another dead body that is charred and flayed, which they think belongs to Frank. While the police are investigating, Lucas arrives, and Julia gets him and brings him to the hospital. The doctor says that he is dehydrated and has chronic malnourishment. Julia decides to take care of Lucas despite Paul's opposition. At the hospital, Lucas reminisces about the day that his father arrives home after they visit the meth lab. Frank vomits black blood, and his appearance changes. He asks Lucas and Aiden to keep him locked no matter what, because he is very sick. One day, Lucas tells his father that Aiden is sick as well, so he opens the door and pulls Aiden inside. Lucas is tormented upon seeing his father and only brother's condition, but he cannot do anything for them. All he can do is to scream whenever his father bangs his head on the door. Back to the present, Julia and Paul bring Lucas' drawing to an old man who also sees the dead body of Frank's accomplice in the forest. He explains that Lucas's drawing and the antlers that they see in the mine belong to a Wendigo, a diabolical wickedness that devours human beings. In the legend, during a very cold winter, a lost hunter's excessive hunger forced him to cannibalism. He loses his mind after eating human flesh and transforms into a formless spirit, which roams into the forest to capture fresh victims. Paul cannot believe it because it is only a myth, but Julia is very convinced. On their way home, Paul receives a report that a dead body is found by the tracks, so they hurriedly go there. He is very surprised upon learning that the half-eaten body actually belongs to his sister's student, who bullied Lucas. Near the crime scene, Julia waits for Paul outside the car. He still doesn't believe that the deaths of the people are connected to each other, but Julia's belief is intact, so she asks her brother to pick up Lucas in the hospital and bring him to their house, because she thinks that he is also in danger. Afterward, Paul asks his acquaintance to go to his house to check his sister and Lucas. At home, Lucas and Julia talk about their family. She shares that her father died of suicide not too long ago. She also informs Lucas that his father died as well, but Lucas doesn't believe it and responds that it was his old dad, who was sick and mean, but his new dad is with Aiden, and soon they will get him for reunion again. Meanwhile, Paul's acquaintance roves around the house and hears screeches. He walks at the back of the house as the screeching continues. Julia and Lucas hear the creepy sound as well. Lucas says that his father is already there to pick him up. Paul's acquaintance reports to Paul that there is something in the shed. He then goes inside and sees Aiden hiding inside a small box. Suddenly, the Wendigo-possessed Frank kills him instantly. Paul arrives home later and checks the shed, only to find his acquaintance's dead body. He sees Aiden, but the possessed Frank throws him away. He gets up and hides on the wall, but he is attacked again by Frank. Julia goes out to the shed and finds Paul unconscious. She tries to move Paul and covers his wounds. She drives all the way to the mine, so as to rescue Lucas with his wounded brother in the passenger seat. She bravely enters the mine and finds Lucas and Aiden there. Lucas tells her to leave. As she checks the place, she sees Frank, who is possessed by a Wendigo, eating a dead black bear. She fights against it, and eventually kills it with the help of Lucas. Unfortunately, the Wendigo spirit passes into Aiden. Lucas tries to stop Julia from killing his brother, but she firmly tells him that he will never get better. She asks Lucas to look away, then she hugs Aiden, and kills him by stabbing his back to end the curse. After a while, Julia and her brother Paul decide to keep Lucas with them in the meantime, despite their fear that he might become possessed as well. However, as Julia and Lucas walk away, Paul begins to cough and spits black liquid, just like what happened to Frank and Aiden when they were first possessed by the Wendigo. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.